she needed to maintain her hormone levels. That was the repeated justification for the denial of transfer. But the petitioner had reached full female hormone levels before even being incarcerated. At the time, the district judge in Indiana who sentenced the petitioner requested that she be placed in a women's facility. Her hormones were entirely female at that point, and so the decision by the Transgender Executive Council to deny the transfer request based on this idea that it was only because her hormones needed to be consistent and stabilized, I found was a pretext, but they never once said she cannot be transferred because of violence. It was always based on this idea that her hormones had to be.
Thank you, Judge Netburn. Senator Padilla.
Judge Netburn, that's directly contrary to what your report
you all
said.
have
That is
had
directly
no.
We're going to follow up.
We're going to
follow up, and that's how it works.
There is not.
That is exactly how it works.
Look,
if you follow up, you didn't get extra time, and she just directly contradicted her own report. I'm just going to read her own words because it's exactly the opposite of what she said. Your own report.
Senators, I gave both of you more time to finish your line of questioning. I allowed the witness to finish.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Congress Lens. I'm Audrey. If you just saw that snippet, you're probably feeling the same mix of anger and confusion that I am. We just got a small taste of a Senate hearing where a Judge Netburn, was being questioned by Senator Ted Cruz about a decision that, on the face of it, seems utterly insane. Putting a serial child rapist, a biological man, into a women's prison because he identifies as female? And the judge who ordered it is sitting there calmly talking about hormone levels? I am genuinely stunned. This is one of those moments where you see, in crystal clear detail, how radical ideology is being placed above the safety and basic rights of citizens. We're going to watch the full exchange now, and I guarantee you, it only gets more infuriating. Stick around, because in the main video, we're going to break down exactly how Senator Cruz dismantles this judicial activism and why this should be a wake-up call for everyone. Don't go anywhere.
The government did not move for a stay of the decision.
Well, Judge Netburn, I'm going to continue on this line of questioning. In your court, what matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology?
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
Well, my political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology. This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole, but then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're
Yes,
asking me?
the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision
I asked you a
based on what
question.
the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, the beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical." Have you dealt, in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
You also wrote, "The BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown." I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women, and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault, I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered. I think you're a radical, and I think you have no business being a judge.
Judge Netburn, there was an opportunity during your exchange with Senator Cruz that you were attempting to offer a response relative to the conditions under which this petitioner was unsafe in the facilities in which she was being held. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to finish that response.
So the facts that were presented to me and what I relied on to make my decision were that the petitioner had engaged in no violence, no physical violence, no acts of sexual violence whatsoever while in custody. All three wardens who supervised the petitioner requested that she be transferred to a women's facility because of her serious medical needs. In addition, the Bureau of Prisons' longtime medical provider testified at a 2-day hearing in my courtroom and recommended that the petitioner be transferred because of her serious medical needs. And the last thing I'll say is that the Transgender Executive Council, which is the body that makes decisions on behalf of transgender transfer requests within the Bureau of Prisons, never said that the petitioner could not be transferred, and never, ever said that she couldn't be transferred because of any risk of violence. What the Transgender Executive Council repeatedly said in denying the request was simply that she needed to maintain her hormone levels. That was the repeated justification for the denial of transfer. But the petitioner had reached full female hormone levels before even being incarcerated. At the time, the district judge in Indiana who sentenced the petitioner requested that she be placed in a women's facility. Her hormones were entirely female at that point, and so the decision by the Transgender Executive Council to deny the transfer request based on this idea that it was only because her hormones needed to be consistent and stabilized, I found was a pretext, but they never once said she cannot be transferred because of violence. It was always based on this idea that her hormones had to be.
Thank you, Judge Netburn. Senator
Judge
Padilla.
Netburn, that's
Senator
directly contrary to what your
Senator,
report
you all
said.
have
That is
had
direct-
no.
We're gonna follow up.
We're going to
No,
there
you're gonna
is
follow
no
up, and that's how it
follow-up.
works.
There is not.
That is
There
exactly
is-
how it works.
Look,
If you follow up, you didn't get extra time, and she just directly contradicted her own report. I'm just going to read her own words
I'm just sitting
because
fair,
it's
Madam
exactly
Chair.
the opposite of what she said. Your own
Chair.
report.
Senators,
said, quote,
I gave both of you more time to finish your line
allowed
of
the witness to
questioning.
testify
I
and
allowed the
introduce
witness
facts.
to
You jumped in
finish
and took
her.
another round.
I allowed
You
the
took
witness
another
to
round.
finish
You
her
opened the door.
response.
You
I
opened the
allowed
door
the
to this.
witness to finish
You're
her
abusing
response.
your status
That is,
as chair.
Okay, I understand
That
that you're
is not-
scared of the
You are
facts.
abusing
I
your
have-
status
Chair.
as chair.
Senator
Madam Chair,
Padilla?
You
Madam
can't
Chair,
just open
Thank you,
up
Madam Chair.
testimony and then
she
not
has an
give us a
obligation
chance
to explain
cross-examine.
why she directly contradicted what she wrote in her report. She says in her report, the Bureau of Prisons' claimed penological interest is in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. She just told you the Bureau of Prisons didn't say there was a concern about sexual violence and trauma. Those are directly contradictory, and why are you contradicting what you wrote in your report?
And what are you
Madam
trying to
Chair, I
hide,
believe
Madam
I have
Chair?
the floor.
No, wait, point of
I
order.
believe
Senator
I
Padilla.
have the
Senator
floor.
Padilla.
Are you going to let her answer that question?
Senator
or you
Padilla.
don't want her to answer that question?
Senator
You're
Padilla.
afraid?
This
Very
is
much,
a
Madam
cover-up,
Chair.
Madam
Senator
Chair.
Are you
Padilla.
afraid of the answer to
This
that
is
Colleague.
no
Cover-up.
Are you
Senator
afraid
Padilla.
of the answer to that question?
Senator
Colleagues,
Padilla.
So yes,
My
you are
time.
afraid of the answer to that question.
Senator Padilla.
Please hold
Clearly,
my
you're
time.
afraid of the answer to that question.
This is
Thank you.
absurd.
To the nominees before us, appreciate your patience and
Okay, welcome back.
your
So,
dignity.
we've just watched the full exchange, and I need to start by saying this. Senator Ted Cruz was not just asking questions in that room. He was acting as a voice for every single person who looks at that decision and thinks, have we lost our minds? Let's break this down. The case involves a criminal, a person named Mlan, who is biologically male. Let's be clear and use the facts. Mlan is a man. Mlan pled guilty to raping a 9-year-old boy. Mlan pled guilty to raping a 17-year-old girl. Mlan was later convicted for distributing child pornography. This is not a petty criminal. This is a predatory, serial, violent offender. And Judge Netburn's order was to place Mlan, a 6 feet 2 inches man with male genitalia, into a women's prison. Senator Cruz's first masterstroke was cutting through the jargon and getting to the heart of the matter. He asked Judge Netburn, what matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology? And when she gave the standard, I just follow the law answer, he called it out. He said, I don't believe you. And why shouldn't he? The facts of the case scream that ideology was the primary driver here. The most powerful part of this entire exchange was when Senator Cruz became the voice of the voiceless. He asked the question that the judge, the Bureau of Prisons, and the entire system seemed to ignore. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights? Do they have the right not to have a 6 feet 2 inches man who is a repeat, serial rapist put in as their cellmate? This is the core of the issue. Where is the concern for the female inmates? These are women who are in a vulnerable position, and the very system that is supposed to protect them is deliberately placing a known predator in their midst. It is an absolute betrayal. Then, Senator Cruz did what a good investigator does. He used Judge Netburn's own words against her. He read directly from her order where she dismissed the Bureau of Prisons' concerns about protecting female prisoners as a theoretical risk and said their trauma was overblown. A theoretical risk? For a man with Mlan's record? In what universe is that theoretical? But here's where it gets even more damning. When given a chance to explain herself later, Judge Netburn tried to backtrack. She claimed the Bureau of Prisons Transgender Council never said that the petitioner could not be transferred because of any risk of violence. But as Senator Cruz immediately pounced on, this directly contradicts her own written order, where she explicitly acknowledged the BOP did raise that exact concern. She can't have it both ways. She either knowingly ignored a legitimate safety concern, or she is now misrepresenting her own reasoning to save face. Either option is completely disqualifying for a judge. Senator Cruz was right to label this as radical. This isn't justice, it's social experimentation with the lives of vulnerable women as the lab rats. He wasn't being aggressive, he was being necessary. He was providing the accountability that is so desperately missing. This is why channels like Congress Lens are so important. This isn't just political theater, this is a real-time exposure of a justice system that is losing its way. It shows us why we need representatives who are willing to ask the tough questions and call out this insanity, no matter how uncomfortable it makes the political establishment. What do you think? Was Senator Cruz right to go this hard, or was he out of line? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you agree that this kind of oversight is crucial, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Congress Lens, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown. Thanks for watching.